On the road. An erratic bird trying desperately to flee its cage, constantly banging into the bars, other birds, biting the hand that feeds, and celebrating in meaninglessness, therefore creating meaning, being an oxymoron of itself in idiocy. So, we got On the Road. On the Road by Jack Kerouac. Came out in 1955 or 1957. I found both publication dates inside the book. So, a lot of places online say 1957. It is a beat or stream of consciousness novel. Also I'm going to mispronounce this horribly because it's French, Roma clef, spelt phonetically anglicized as Roman a clef. What that means is that the literal translation from French would be novel with a key, the key being the relationship between the fiction and nonfiction. So basically how I would describe this book and the genre it is, other than being on the stream of consciousness writing and being kind of like in the beat generation and that era, the roman à clef part is that there's a thinly veiled facade of fiction over all these things that are true to life and that happened. I'm sure some parts are slightly fictionalized, intentionally or unintentionally, by memory and drug use and whatever else. But generally, this book has many characters in it that were real people. They just have been given pseudonyms. That's something that actually my foreword here talks about in some detail as well in this edition of the book. Yeah. So, getting into it, I will have a couple spoilers at the end, but not very many. But I can tell you, it's manic and messy, irresponsible, which we'll get into in a bit here. It's annoying and kind of boring. It's I was really let down by it, like really let down, and I'll get into that a little bit later some more. But basically, On the Road. I mean, Jack Kerouac. It's like his masterpiece, right? Like that's supposed to be like his real work there, and I was really disappointed. I've heard about it. I think it's one of those things though. Like I should never assume that because the way a book has been built up or talked about, or a person or whatever, that it's going to actually be that thing. And I got taken for a ride, but not the one I wanted. And yeah, so On the Road, it just wasn't for me. But it also wasn't what it was said to have been. Like it was projected to be certain things, and I was like, that seems really misleading. Yeah, I mentioned it was annoying and that it was irresponsible, but I mean, you're calling the book itself irresponsible is not what I mean. It's boring and annoying. I don't like despicable characters, especially main characters. Every book has to have conflict. Every story has conflict. A lot of times there's conflict with other characters. A lot of times there's characters that you might not like that would play an antagonist, and that's necessary. But having your protagonists be despicable characters and annoying and whatever else that we'll get into here, that's really hard for me. It's happened before. Like the Basketball Diaries, for instance, and that was really annoying. Like, it was frustrating. So, also a little bit with Catcher in the Rye, but not nearly as bad. I feel like I got more out of that than both of those, than Basketball Diaries or On the Road. Yeah, they're despicable idiots. The main thing I think a lot of people have, the impression that people have about the book, or I think, the impression that I had about the book that I think was given to me, by media and Kerouac himself and critics, etc. Been like that it's like this adventure, like you got to get on the road and live life, and like something that all young people should read. And I don't agree. In some ways, it's just a list of all these things that they do, again with that stream of consciousness writing. But those things like aren't really cool things. There's what I'm going to call nihilistic hedonism, where simultaneously it's like they don't care about anything, and then it's like, hey man, we're just living. We're just living life. We're just getting our kicks. That's like a huge thing, getting our kicks. So just having fun, and just that's what the main goal of their life is, which is the hedonistic part. But there's also the nihilistic part of like nothing matters. It doesn't matter, and it's like it doesn't like nothing matters other than getting their kicks, other than pleasure and fun. But as I'm sure you know, as most people know, that doesn't work that way. That like, are we talking about short-term fun or long-term fun? Because like characters continually run into problems of not having fun because of that nihilistic attitude of like, oh, we're just living and just it doesn't matter. It's like, no, things matter, and there's consequences to your actions, and you know it's you can't just let everything go and then you just end up being a really crappy person with that attitude and that way of living. Yeah. So some of the characters in here, in that Beat generation, I mean, Burroughs is in there, William S. Burroughs, Allen Ginsberg is in there, and the main character in a way, so I mean, Kerouac is here. It is from his perspective, but in this he calls himself Sal Paradise. And yeah, Ginsberg and Burroughs are not called Ginsberg and Burroughs. They are represented by other names, like pseudonyms. But the main character, in a way, isn't Sal, even though this is being told from his perspective. It's really, in my opinion, way more about Dean. In the book, Dean Mortuary, something like that, Moriarty, I can't remember his last name, but it is this representation of Neil Cassidy, who's someone, a name that I never heard of. But they all kind of ran together, and Kerouac got introduced to him, I believe it was through Ginsberg, or maybe it was Burroughs, one of the two or both, and he was fascinated with them. And basically, Dean here, or Neil, but in the book, Dean, he's just bananas. And as the book continues to go on, he gets more and more unstable. Let's say that without giving spoilers away. It's hard to tell you what the book is about. I can tell you how the book makes me feel, but like the spoiler element, right? Like the way that it's presented, is it really about these folks, these young kids and whatever, they're just living life on the road and getting their kicks? Yeah, but they do it in this manner that is so, it's not joyous. Like, it depends on the person you are, but I don't find it fun. I find it boring and annoying. It gets old fast. It's like a celebration of their antics, but their antics are not like worth celebrating. It's not like, there's no growth. There we go. I don't see any growth in this book. I'm going to have to get into spoilers soon, so I got to tell you some things before I get there. But I'm really disappointed with the book. We can say that right off the bat. I can tell you a couple other things here. So, the target audience, it's really hard for me to pinpoint that without being offensive. People who like nonsense, that are like free spirits and carefree, those type of people might enjoy it. It is under the guise of depth, but I don't find it here. I will also say there's the obvious is that I might just be missing the point. I might have missed something. It might have gone over my head. That's possible, for sure. But I don't think so. I've tried to find some stuff in here, and I'll get more into that with shelf placement here. But yeah, for who's it for? I don't know. Like I don't think it's for people who like reading classics. I enjoy reading classics, or I thought I did. But this is one of those ones that it's so offbeat And I don't find it fun for me. It is tedious. It becomes really tedious to keep reading. It's a slog of a read, and it's not because of the language. And the language isn't like rich in beauty for me to find like an affection for the book or author in that sense either. It's not that introspective. It's a presentation. If you want to call it one of those slice of life books that I do find challenging, sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad way, it's kind of like a slice of life, but repeatedly making mistakes that they don't think are mistakes and being really irresponsible. And again, just that nihilistic hedonism thing. I guess if you enjoy nihilistic hedonism, maybe it's for you. I have a hard... Like, when I say it challenged me, it didn't challenge me in the way that got me thinking a lot. It got me thinking about why the hell am I reading this book? What's going on here? This isn't what I thought. It's not of a lot of value to me. It was a challenge to keep reading something that I didn't find value in. That's the type of challenge opposed to me. Again, I have a problem with despicable characters as well as being your protagonist. That's hard for me to swallow. No growth or depth. It's just a facade of depth. But, yeah. Is it important? Again, I've got some spoilers. We'll get into some specifics here. I would say that it's not important. I was speaking to a friend about it, and they were saying, maybe back in the 50s and 60s, it was an important book at the time. And I don't know if it would have been important then. There's some things in here, too, that, like, a couple people have talked about. Like, that's not cool no matter what generation you're in. Like, no matter what decade it is. Like, that's just not cool. Like, it's not like that. There's some things in here that are more accepted in a certain time frame, which we'll get into. And then other things that are not, ever. But what function does it serve? I'm not really sure. This is kind of like Sunshine Sketches of a Small Town. With, again, despicable characters, and the voice of the author doesn't seem to... Like, that at least was meant to be humorous in a way. And you can check out my review on that. But, like, this doesn't seem to be humorous. Like, I don't think this is meant to be humorous at all. It's just, like, this representation of their life just plainly put out there without judgment. And that's really difficult. Like, how do you put that out there so plainly without ever admitting to faults or having moments of growth? Or it's just like, hey, we just accept things that just... It's one of those things that I'm like, man, how... Like, that type of nihilism of, like, yeah, things happen. It's like, no, you made choices. You made things happen. And it's not just like, yeah, things happen, you just got to deal with them. Like, you could have made that not happen. Anyway, if I give it the benefit of the doubt, which I would like to do with books and media, I would say that parts of it are over my head. That's what I would say. I believe that it did ask a couple questions of its audience, but not very many in the way that I would like ones that are positive, that are introspective, that get someone really thinking and whatever. I don't really think that's there much, if at all. Where is it on my shelf? I'm keeping it on the shelf, but it is really low on my shelf. And that's the thing that it goes back to, like, what function does it serve? I don't recommend reading it. Again, it was a slog to get through. And it was tedious and boring, but not in the ways you'd expect. They go from hijink to hijink to hijink to, like, but they're not story. It's not a good yarn. It's not, in my opinion, it's not good storytelling. That's just, again, it's a flavor thing. It is somewhat definitely subjective, for sure. I think objectively, the writing here is interesting, and it is not bad. I can't say that it's bad writing. That I cannot say. But I could say that if your intention was to tell a story... Again, that's the thing. What was your intention, right? If your intention was to tell a story that was entertaining, I think you failed. If your intention was to just veil a memoir of this period to this period in your life, then I guess you succeeded in just letting us know this was your life, and you haven't given any commentary on how you feel about that, because that's the thing. It's just like a slice of life, and it doesn't give you... It's just like, here you go. That's it. That's life. And But to me, it just happens to be that thing that really pushes my buttons of like, no, that's not just life. Like, there has to be some depth here, some actual depth, or moments of growth, or criticisms, or judgment of self, or like, but it's just like, no, this is just what happened. They're like, no, but it's not what happened. Anyway, I'm going to go off the rails. It's really low on my shelf, and I don't recommend reading it. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. Again, unless you're a person, it's just because I don't generally talk to people that like, I like to suggest things that I enjoy. I like to suggest things that I think are good. I feel like this is a waste of time. That's how I feel. Again, if you are a person who's full of nonsense and wants to be carefree and, again, live that nihilistic, hedonistic lifestyle, then by all means, it's probably for you, and you might get something out of it, which would just be entertainment, I think. It's really low on my shelf, but this is the thing. Why do I keep it on my shelf? Why do I keep it on my shelf? I'm going to get into some spoilers now. So, close to the end of the book here. For me, it's page 229, and we're in a book that's 277 pages, I think. So definitely in the back 9 of the book, there's a page here that really exemplifies a couple things. So, and the quotes here are short. So Dean says, "What's your road, man?" And then he goes on a list of different types of roads. And that question, just that question alone, it's kind of like when you're watching a movie and they say the title of the movie in the dialogue, and you're like, oh, okay. And it's kind of like an eye roll moment. But when he's like, "What's your road, man?" I was like, okay, is that actually a hint at me getting something out of this book? Because now you've actually asked me the question of like, what's your road? Is he about to like talk about how his road sucked and he shouldn't have done those things and he feels remorseful and like he wants to pick a better road? But he doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. So for a moment there, just him asking just outright in that kind of corny way, "What's your road, man?" I feel like that gave me a point to reflect on. And this is kind of a manual of what not to do or how to not live, in my opinion. But let's keep going here. "I tell you, Sal, straight, no matter where I live, my trunk's always sticking out from under the bed. I'm ready to leave or get thrown out. I've decided to leave everything out of my hands. You've seen me try and break my ass to make it, and you know that it doesn't matter, and we know time. How to slow it up and walk and dig and just old-fashioned spade kicks. What other kicks are there? We know." So going back, he says that his trunk's always half sticking out from under the bed because he's always ready to leave or get kicked out. And that I've decided to leave everything out of my hands, right? But he's lived his like the years of the book that this again, there's years here of his life, Dean's life, and Sal's life. And Dean, yeah, he's always been ready to get kicked. He's always lived with it out of his hands, it seems. Like when they talk about his past and stuff too. And that's that nihilistic, oh, it doesn't matter. And he's sometimes he complains. Like if he is confronted and challenged by somebody, it's like he gets pouty. He doesn't have remorse. He is manic. I think that he had mental health problems that were not checked. And it was like, oh man, this guy's he's crazy. He's just living life. He's just so full of joy. And that's the other thing. The ragged and ecstatic joy of pure being. That is how the Sunday Times has framed this book, representing the ecstatic joy of pure being. Absolutely not. Like, the Dean says that a lot. Or in the moment, he's like, man, he is alive and he is here for this very present moment. But life isn't just about present moments, right? Your actions in this moment have consequences for your future, which is your present later. And without that acknowledgement, it's just bananas. Because there are times where he is suffering consequences, but it's all attitude, right? And if he doesn't think he's suffering, well, I guess he's not. Like, there's this other moment that is interesting because he hurts his hand. Like, permanently damages his hand. And he does this through physical abuse to another character, a woman, his partner. Well, one of many partners. Sometimes he has like 3 partners at the same time and has kids with all of them. So we're in the spoiler section anyway. There you go. Yeah. And it's just like, He keeps going back and forth between them, and there's just a lot of things he does that are just so ridiculous. And underage women, and then here's the thing. So he hurts his hand, and to me that was like kind of... I don't think there's much symbolism or metaphor in this book, is another thing. So it's like trying to get something out of it. It's like I want to get something out of a book when I read it. That's what I want. I want to think of new things and apply them differently and consider things in a different way. I want them to slightly challenge me and change my perspective, possibly. Not just reaffirm things, or in this case, just... Well, no, it reaffirms that this way of life sucks. I'm getting all worked up. But him hurting his hand, I'm like, that might have been representative of some things. I was like, again, that biting the hand that feeds. And like, no, the hand that feeds is him. Like, he is responsible for his own actions, right? And he's always blaming somebody else. And like, the thing is that Sal, or like representative of Kerouac here, there's times where like Dean is after like an underage woman, like really underage, she's like 12 or something, and it's like no one in that time period thought that was cool. Like no one else in the book thought that was cool. And Sal like covers for him kind of. Like he doesn't support what he's doing, but he doesn't tell him not to do it. But he like is kind of like, oh no, it's okay, like he's just whatever, like I'll take care of him, like don't kill him, don't beat him up or whatever, like he's my brother, like we'll just leave. And it's like, dude, like, but you never talk to this guy about it. You just leave that completely out. Have you ever been like, Dean, like, I can't be your friend anymore, or like, what's wrong with you, or like, no. I think Dean had mental health problems, or Neil Cassidy in real life, that were definitely unchecked. But like, again, this is not a cautionary tale. It's not anything to do with growth or challenging. Like, I don't know. It's really difficult. So why does it stay on my shelf? I guess it is representative, again, of a way that I wouldn't want to live. Whereas Sunshine Sketches, I would take that off. Sunshine Sketches is meant to be humorous. This is not meant to be humorous. Like, I swear up and down, I don't think it's a joke. I don't think it's meant to be humorous. I don't think it's meant to be entertaining. I think it is just supposed to be, hey, it just is. Here it is. And there's some value in that. I think that is a challenging concept. I think I got something out of it in that aspect. That it is a challenging concept. It does tell me something. It gives me a question about living in the present and your attitude, and that's all that matters. And that whole thing of why can't I think? Of like your reality being, perception is reality, right? So if Dean doesn't ever think anything's his fault, then I guess nothing is his fault, right? And if he's just living life and just seeing what happens, and I guess nothing's ever bad for him. As an audience, I think you see things could be a lot better for him if he made different choices. But if you are him and you just refuse to, it's almost like being an optimist, but it's not at all. Like, again, because he's made choices that have just continually screwed him and other people up. He has physically and emotionally abused many people, and it just doesn't matter, apparently. Anyway, that's all I have to really say about On the Road. I didn't enjoy it. It's really low on my shelf. It did something for me, but I wouldn't even recommend it worth a read. In my opinion, that's just where it's at. And On the Road.